Welcome to Universal Consciousness, where we promote love, light, and consciousness through information. My name is Brother Spear.
And I'm Dr. Heter. And tonight we have Aukee Toliver, and he's the author of The Greatest Story Ever Stolen. And he's going to continue to talk to us about the legacy of Cush, Kemet, and world religions. Welcome, Aukee.
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good to see you again, my brother.
Good to see you as well.
You know, as being a world traveler, it's an honor, man, to share space, you know, when you're in town and you sit on our forums. Glad to have you.
Good to be here.
All right. So.
Gonna get started.
All right.
Okay. So, as the last time I spoke, I focused on spirituality, and I'm going to do so again this week. But I'm going to cover the entirety of the book this time. So we're going to go back into spirituality. Then we're going to talk about astronomy, astrology, and religion. Okay. And those were the four main topics as I was doing my journey and searching for who I was and what my ancestors, how they saw their worldview and their spirituality. And my ancestors, I consider, are the classical civilizations of Cush and Kemet, which are Ethiopia today and Egypt.
Okay, great.
So, in the beginning of the book, and which I'll be referring to, and I'm going to quickly go through it. Normally this would take 5 hours, but we're going to do this, a synopsis of it. I give classical wisdoms from our ancestors. It appears from my studies that one of the main purposes of life was to learn from your elders and to learn from the ancestors. And the ancestors left knowledge through books, through teachings, through the temple walls, and it's to prepare the young generation to become adults and to become elders themselves, because the civilization they saw the future in the younger generation. So one of those wisdoms that I give, one is from Ptah-hotep. He was a spiritual teacher called a Seba, and that's what I consider myself. The Seba was the assistant to the pharaoh, which we call the Nesubiti. And the pharaoh had to learn from the Sebas. Okay? So the leader of the civilization in Cush and Kemet was a spiritual leader. There was no separation of church and state. Okay, so let me read from Ptah-hotep. Now, Ptah-hotep, if you are a reader, if you would like to read the oldest book known on the planet, it is called The Teachings of Ptah-hotep. And it's a book of wisdoms. He was the vizier of the pharaoh. And he was leaving his a young person, teaching them how to behave. And a lot of the wisdoms are how to behave through actions and through speech. It was more precious to be silent than to speak. Of course, you can't really hear someone unless you're silent. Okay? So a silent person was considered wise and of many years. But one who was jabbering at the mouth is considered flashy, one to be out there and not as wise. So here's one from Ptah-hotep, which are many. May your heart never be vain for what you know. Take counsel from the ignorant as well as the wise. Since one never reaches the limits of one's art, and there has never been an artisan who has reached perfection. Okay, so that's just one of a few that I have of classical wisdoms. And there's many books. There's the Teachings of Ani, and there's some others that I'll mention later that you can find online that have many wisdoms that I recommend looking at. Okay, so I go into who we are. So as I was coming to an understanding of who I am and what was my purpose in life, that's what this book is about. So the purpose is, who are you and what, according to our ancestors, and what is your purpose in life? So from the beginning, I explain that you are a human, and I break down human as who and man, that you are of spirit and of the physical realm and of the flesh, that you are eternal, you've always existed, that you're coming here in as a man to have an experience, or a woman, or as anything. So you can come and experience the physical realm of the universe as anything. You can be a rock, a plant, and things that are not seen. You can be air. So, but within those physical things are the unseen, which we call spirit. It's the unconceivable, unthinkable, unknowable part of the universe. It's nothing spooky like a ghost. It's just our ancestors. Our ancestors didn't know it all, but they sensed that matter has a creator. Everything that you see must have been created from something, and they called that the void, which they call the Neteru. Okay, so we are that unconceivable. So you have that unconceivable, like in Antarctica, you have the iceberg. You have the seen above the water, and most of the unseen is below the water, which is you as well. So that's with anything. Everything has those properties. Okay, so who was the first breath, the first word ever created by the Neteru atom? Atom represents the creation. Everything comes from atom. It's explained in the creation story, and wherever he expanded is him. There's no place the atom is not, and that's you. And it's not just the physical; it is the non-physical as well. Our ancestors did consider the spiritual to be more powerful than the physical, because the physical is temporary, where the spiritual is eternal. So things that existed in you that are eternal are considered your personality, which you call your ka, which is eternal, and your spirit, which is, so your personality is part of your spirit. So it's not that you live this life and you learn these wisdoms or you do these things in vain and you die and that's it. Those things live on for eternity. And you're really building your personality, because in the next life your personality will live as something else. So you're bettering wherever you'll be involved next.
Right.
Okay. So I explained last week, the Neter is considered all existence. That's who you are. That's everything is divine and is all existence. And then you have the Neteru, are those things that the Kushites created to explain the Neter. So if you look at the Metu Neter, for the symbol for Neter is an axe. So an axe is to cut. So in order to determine the property or define what something is made of, you cut it up to figure out what it is. So that's why there's many Neterus, because Neter is unexplainable. So they had to create so many to explain it. Okay, so I know for over 2,000 that I've read, but I'm sure there may be more than that. Okay, but they're all explaining the oneness of the universe, which is you.
Okay, so let me say this. Isn't that where they wrote about the all? Because the all is the creator and designer of the all?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great.
The all has many names and is unnameable and unconceivable. The closest Neteru to explaining the all is Amen. And you say that at the end of the Lord's Prayer. And you pray over your food and say it. So Amen, or men, and Amen are all the same. It comes from Africa, from Cush. Okay, so that's the unconceivable part of existence, which is you as well. All right, so the origins of Cush and Kemet come from the Congo. I explained that in the book. I'm not going to go in detail this week about it. And we looked at nature. Our ancestors observed the stars and what in the forest and the trees and the animals. They created totems to represent these powers and attributes of nature. Their tribes may have been represented by a totem, and they exude power from these parts of nature because they saw it, these things greater than themselves but of themselves. Okay.
And just interestingly, that cosmology you're explaining is the cosmology all over Africa.
Yes.
They just called it by different names.
Correct.
Right.
All right. And so, excuse me as I'm going fast through my book. So just give me a second.
Take your time.
All right.
No, go on. I'm going to
okay.
finish.
So I put Cush. I date Cush to around 70,000 BC based off an artifact in the Nubian Museum. They have it written on the wall. You look up a video by Astrology, he's talking about it. So, and I see that as true because John G. Jackson, he's an ancestor. He's a historian of ancient Egypt. Wrote books like The Origins of African Civilization, the Christianity Before Christ.
Yes,
He explains that the Cushites named the stars, mapped them, created the constellations, knew that the earth was round. Yep. They created the year, 365 and a quarter days. So all the zodiac, everything, the size of the earth, the hours, the minutes come. So time comes from the Cushites. So they had to determine what day it was or what time would it be. So you lose the fear that the night may bring. You have more comfort in your existence, and you have more control of things. You can plan accordingly. You can make plans. Oh, meet me at this certain time. So now that you have time, you can coordinate between people. Let's meet here. Let's do this day, and that starts to help civilization prolong itself.
Right.
And they saw in the observance of the stars and the sun, in particular, and the moon, certain things, and they studied these for thousands of years. So they created something called an age, which is talked about even in the Bible. They created the zodiac, and they saw things in particular with the sun. And the sun they considered was the most powerful attribute of nature, and the sun represented the spirit, yourself. So they created a cosmology or a theology based on the stars. Some people will call it astrotheology. Okay, so the sun, as it rises in the morning, and it appears that it is birthed from the earth. Okay, so the earth was considered the mother bull, a bull. Okay, so it's the bull on the eastern horizon. When the sun sets, it's considered going into the bull. So it's still the bull, so it's two bulls. Okay, so I'm quickly speaking of the zodiac now. And I'm going to go back to the zodiac. But imagine they saw the primordial mound. This is the sun being birthed from the mound and going back to the mound. And the mound represented the physical realm. And the sun represents one spirit. Okay? All right, so I put ancient Kemet, which is the daughter of Cush, around 40,000 BC. And that's based on the Turin Papyrus, which lists all the kings and how long they reigned for. And I include the demigods, which from my research, they included the Neteru as the rulers because they knew Kemet was that old, but they just didn't know who ruled at the time. That's how old Kemet was. They probably lost the actual ruler at the time, so they replaced it with a Neter.
Right, but they did say that they did say that gods at one time ruled Kemet before the kings.
Okay.
And then they installed the kings to rule
You're right. And
Yeah.
what happened is because they left their documents on papyrus that lasted through all the time through history,
Yeah.
for us to use that as our thumb drive or our data.
Yeah.
That because that was the scrolls that were full of information left by the ancestors.
And they left it on the walls. But anyway,
And walls too,
So the god. So originally, the oldest two Neterus are Ptah and Bes. Okay, and Ptah stands for the creator. He was the original main Neteru prior to the civilization of Cush. And then you have Bes, who looks like a Twa. Okay, so that's discussed in the book. And so the creation story is that Atom had nowhere to stand. And Atom, you can place Atom with Ptah, Ra, Ausar, Heru. They're all representing the same, which is yourself. So Ra, Atom Ra, which is had no place to stand. So the primordial mound was placed there for them to stand. And the primordial mound, when you see the symbol of that on the temple walls, it looks like a U shaped, like that. And then you see the sun in the middle. So what you see a Set and other Neterus may wear are the cow horns, the bull horns with the sun in the middle. That's the primordial mound with the sun in it. The primordial mound shape looks like bull horns, also shaped like the Ka. That's your personality. Okay. All right. So a lot of the temples, when you walk in the front of them, have those two looking primordial mounds that you walk through as the sun. So you're walking through the primordial mound. So same symbolism. Okay. So that's discussed in the book. I found 7 triads. A triad is part of the creation story. The first trinity was Atom, Shu, and Tefnut. Okay? And then I find 6 others that I know of. These were just creation stories. These Neterus represent stories that were given for people to remember. So these stories had to be fantasized in a way, so your children or people will remember them. That's the technology they had. This is like before probably they had paper. So the people in the tribes would sit at a fire and say these grand fantasy stories so people will remember them. That was the technology. It was called allegory, myth. Okay? So I don't say this in the book, but when I list 7, and of these 7, none of these Neterus are physical beings that never existed. They're just principles and attributes of nature. And then I list the 7th Trinity as being of the Christian Trinity. If you're saying Jesus and God in this Trinity are real, but these other 6 Trinities I know are not of sentient beings, then that's something to question. Like, why would the 7th Trinity be real, which will come during the Roman Greek period? But for thousands of years, all civilizations knew this was allegory. Okay? So, to move forward, so they studied nature, which they composed, and the 4 pillars of the universe was water, earth, air, and fire. And these make up your 4 seasons from studying the sun and its Earth's path around the sun. So they knew the 4 seasons, even though they didn't split their year into 4. They understood that those seasons. Okay, all right. So they had 3 seasons that they went by. Okay, so I'm gonna move forward. Any questions so far?
Sounds good.
All right.
Good information.
So the main Trinity, before I pass the Trinity, one that lasted before the Christian Trinity, it was the longest lasting Trinity, was of Ausar, Aset, and Heru.
Right.
And the Old Kingdom story is that Geb, the father of Ausar and Setik, gave the two lands to his sons, which is Ausar and Setik. And then Ausar was no longer able to rule. He passed away, so he gave the land to Heru. And Heru ruled both lands. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the Old Kingdom story. I explain that more in the book. All right, I don't use the one from Plutarch, who was a Greek, and that's the most popular story where Setik cut up his Ausar into 14 pieces. I no longer use that story. So Ausar, let's talk about the Neteru. Ausar represents the axis mound, and the axis mound is the pillar or the axis of the earth. It means stability. That means everything goes around you, that you are inconquerable. Okay, that you are the ruler of the universe. You're the king and king, lord of lords. You are the son of God. You are everything that they talk about Jesus. They used to talk about Ausar. That's where they got that from.
Exactly.
So all those things they mention in the Bible of Jesus, that's what they called you. Okay? You are the pillar, and you are stable, because your true being is non-physical. When you let something bother you, you're letting your ego, you're being attached to thinking that really is affecting you. But since you are eternal and unnameable and undefinable, nothing really can touch you, not even death. You are eternal.
Mm-hmm.
So, excuse me.
Mm-hmm. This is really good information.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you all in the audience are taking heed and taking notes, because this is great stuff.
There's a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
So I should have started off saying EU Imhotep. That means I transform myself in peace. Our existence eternally is to transform, because the universe is transforming. You are the universe. So they saw that everything changes. Nothing stays the same. So, but you do it morally and peacefully. And that's called EU Imhotep. And you do that by having wisdom. And you're just not born with it. You have to gain it, and you have to seek it. Mm-hmm. That's even in the Bible. Mm-hmm. So you obtain it through asking your elders, like, can you provide some profound things you've learned in life?
Yeah.
Or you can read some teachings there's many books on wisdoms from Africa. And that helps build a better you, which builds a better relationship, which builds a better family, which builds a better neighborhood, town, and expands it. Everybody improved themselves, and if you did that on a daily basis, just imagine what the world would be. And they follow these doctrines called Maat, the 42 principles of Maat. And I'm not going to go through all 48, but the most plentiful teachings of Maat were to respect nature. Respect, they didn't have love. They didn't have the word for love. So respect was considered to love. When you respect something and really see it as divine, that's the ultimate thing of love. I'm about to come to a tear in my own words. Are effective.
Well, things resonate from the soul.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what the truth does that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Excuse me, give me a second.
That's okay.
All right.
Reiterate what he said.
All right, so
that's okay.
So all right, so please study those Maat. Maat was in existence for eternity. It represents truth and balance and order, along with science. Science is not separate from spirituality, because science is to know, and it's to know to assist mankind and your surroundings. That's what science is for, to improve things.
Right.
So that's what spirituality is. If your religion or spirituality is not improving things or improving oneself, you have to question it.
Exactly.
All right, so I get into in the book next about, I didn't bring one, the rope. So a rope signifying to bind. The word religion is tied to rebind, to bind oneself. So from my understanding, what is that binding? That's binding the physical and the spiritual together. One is in the other, or the same, or one together.
Right.
Because both are assisting you in your growth. You need both. All right, because you learn, even when you pass away, they consider you're also going to be learning. Whatever happens in this life, it happens in the spirit realm before you come back in the physical realm. So another thing is, just as the sun rises and dies, and at night considered going to sleep, and then it wakes up in the morning, the same as us. When we sleep, they consider that like a death, because it appears that you died. So it's not simply you are born and die and born again. Something happens in that period from my research. You're just not born the same person, because that's not growth.
Right.
So when you die to your old self, you may shed your old ways, because you've learned by going through Mayat, to saying, okay, did my actions and words follow what Mayat is? If not, then you correct yourself. You adjust. That's transformation. And that happens at death, where you reflect. Then you really have to change. You have to ask God. Your power is that you change into a new person every day or every moment, at any moment. So they called it similar to baptism. So they when you purify, water was purification. So the sun would consider doing that on the zodiac, because it goes through your winter season is considered water. So before it rises in March, in the spring equinox, it is considered that it is purified and is born again, the same as us. That when you're baptized, really is, where you get that from in Christianity, comes from Africa, that you shed, like a snake, you shed your skin, and you're a shiny, brand new person. And you don't judge even yourself off that old person. You're not that old person anymore. You're the new person.
And that's what they mean by the rebirth and the resurrection and all that in Christianity.
Right. And it was wise not to judge others, just to remain quiet, because people got their own journey.
That's right.
And you be of assistance to others, but your power is judging oneself.
That's right.
Okay? So the coming forth by day is really oneself being judged, self-justification, self-righteousness. That's the ultimate wisdom, is to judge yourself. Work on yourself. Okay? All right. So I can't not mention that the ancestors, the ancestor veneration was done in Cush and Kemet. So since we don't know all our ancestors, we have millions of unknown ancestors. So when they give libations to the ancestor, they call it Ausar. So Ausar represented he was the first to be born again. This is a Neteru representing born again. So he's the first to become an ancestor. So he represented all your ancestors. So if you do libations, say we give thanks to Mama Ruth, to Charlie's Toliver, to this name, but when you're going through those names, you may forget someone who really should be named. So to avoid that, they would just say Ausar, so which represents all existence. Okay, and he's in the coming forth by day, sitting on the throne. All right, so I'm gonna skip the papyrus of Hunefer. I'm gonna talk about the 9 parts of being. So one's heart is the Ab. Okay, so your Ab has a spiritual and a physical heart. Usually they will put a stone heart in the sarcophagus, in the mummy, because that represents your spiritual being, because you walk and you exist through your heart, your mind. So your heart is really your mind, your thoughts. Okay. The Aku is one's immortal being. You can call it ancestor Aku. Okay. One's Ka and their Ba are joined together, and this forms the Aku. So your Ka is your personality. Your Ka will look like this. That's eternal. Okay. And your Ba is the spirit. So there's a dragon. Yes, I said dragon because I say dragons. Dragons originated in Africa, and Egypt had many of them. There's a dragon that would join your Ka in the body. It's just symbolism, okay? Just for people to remember that. Your Kabit is your shadow. So one can say your shadow is your spiritual being that exists even now, where your physical being exists here on earth, then your spiritual being is existing in the spiritual realm. They exist together. That's your shadow. Your Kat is your physical body. Your Ren is your secret name. So you were given a secret name because, remember, there's a part of you that's unconceivable, that's unknowable. So Ra had many names and even unknown names, just like Amen was unknowable amongst all the Neterus. Nobody knew Amen. Okay? Your Sahu is one's spiritual body, and your Sekhem is one's life force. So I say Sekhem is your heart that beats, and once your heart stops beating, your Sekhem ends. So everything had those 9 parts of being, everything in the physical realm.
Wait a minute, so you're saying the Sahu is the spiritual counterpart of the physical body?
It's one spiritual body.
Okay, because these were kind of, I remember looking at these, and these kind of, I got a little confused on some of these. So, so Kahu is a spiritual body. It's a life force, the Ren. And the other one and the Ba is the spirit, right?
Your Ba is your spirit.
Right, so the spiritual body and the Ba are 2 different things.
Yeah,
so how it's like,
everything
that's
has
your light
duality.
body.
So if you have a body
then you have
in the physical realm, then you have a body in the spiritual realm.
Okay. So basically, Sahu is probably like your light body. Because that people talk about that, in different other spiritual systems. I'm just trying to be, make it clear.
All right.
Yeah, because it's kind of confusing sometimes. I mean, kind of. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that completes spirituality. So to sum it up, because I'm trying to think, is there anything else I want to say about that? I really focus. Half the book is on spirituality, because we have lost. That was the main core of their existence. If you go in a museum, you will see a lot of mummies, and you'll see a lot of statues of Neterus. They weren't focused on death per se. They were focused on eternity,
right?
The afterlife, right? All right. So, and that's it. I say, get the book and continue to research on your own. I think that's the seed that's planted. When you study Cush and Kemet, you will understand the cultures, a lot of the classical cultures, the Persians, the Sumerians. Even I've read that the Indians here in America had that their culture was being one with nature, being the animals, having totems.
All people all over the planet were like that.
Right.
Before the Christian invention.
Right.
That's how people practice life and spirituality. So all people all over the planet, all over Africa, using the word indigenous people, but they all saw themselves as connected to nature. And this is one of the reasons why I believe that they didn't a lot of these cultures didn't have as much material advancement, because of their great and overwhelming respect for nature. So you only use what you need. You don't need to just go and keep keep just pulling and taking from the planet. Just for excess. And so really that's the reality, that they all practice spirituality in the same way the Kemetic culture of society did. But as Massey and others have found, they believe that the African people the planet, and so they brought these spiritual practices with them, and so therefore that's why people practice it in that way.
And I'll tell you something else too. back in indigenous days, different regions, they used totems. And whatever that region was, that top of that totem was the spirit of that region, of that community, and they relied on that totem, the overseeing spirit, to provide for them whatever the provisions were needed for that region. I could say the region a million times, but just every
For that particular group.
For that group in that
Right.
the group in that
particular
region,
people.
right, in that region,
Yeah.
right. Because they all had totems,
Right.
because that was the protection, the provider,
Right.
the foundation that the indigenous group followed.
Right. And so,
You know,
like,
and they stayed locked in
right.
with the ideologies.
Right, and like you talked about before, like because certain powers. So if there was a certain, say for example, an animal became your totem, and because you had a connection to that animal, that power, that spirit of that animal became your guide, and so that's how.
Right. Well, what happens is in different indigenous cultures, they have sages or shamans, and they can communicate with that type of spirit. Overseer, or that spirit protector, or the spirit provider,
right?
And they can come back and send that totem or that spirit of that community out, and come back with the information they need to get through whatever the moment in time that they were faced with. If it were food, famine, rain, even a hunt, they use those spirits to give to. They have a spiritual binding with different animals.
Right.
That they can connect with,
Right. And
okay,
so this whole thing about as above, so below.
That's right.
Just like there's you have the physical animal, then you have the power or the spirit behind the animal, or the entity or energy or being that's responsible for that animal. And so, just kind of just adding to what you're saying here.
Yeah,
and so they had a power.
That's right.
And that's why the people connected with that power of that particular animal, because that power had a unseen aspect of it that help guide them and protect
help
them.
guide. And I
Right.
tell you, that's what these walls are. They have different animals because it tells you that you're one with nature. You're one with nature in all of this. And you're indigenous. If you're created by the all, you're
all
one.
connected.
You're all
Everything's
connected.
connected.
So
Right.
everything's connected.
Right.
So.
And so I just wanted to reiterate this because this came, that there's beings in realms that we can't see with our limited faculties that are responsible for these powers. And so if the animal had a particular power, like something that considered a power, and so they recognized that there was an entity or unseen energy or force that was behind that power.
Well,
And its creation in some instances.
You'd be surprised how when God sends different spirits down, and they use different animal physical bodies
to do stuff,
to do things, to watch over these people, and sometimes that spirit is just a middle, to get the words from God or higher above to the spirit. To communication with, because it's a middle ground.
Right.
There's different realms.
Right.
Everything doesn't go from here to the top. It's the layers.
So when Europeans went in, they thought they were worshiping animals and rocks and all that.
But they weren't.
And they weren't. They weren't
Right.
worshiping them. They just understood there was an energy or force behind it that they were connected with.
That's right. And that's why meditation and going inward is so important, that we no longer do today. We've been told to get on our knees and pray to the skies. You just go inward and pray within yourself.
Right.
And the skies will open for you.
Right. And then the other thing they were saying, because prayer is one way to make connections, but one of the things I remember hearing somebody saying that while you're talking, you can't hear.
That's right.
Right. So if you be quiet and let the universe, the part of you because we're connected, and let it speak to you, then you might be able to hear and be able to.
And you know why?
Right.
Because people think that
you talking, you can't hear.
The people are so oblivious to understanding that the all sees it all. He sees it all. I don't have to say anything. He already knows.
Right.
I don't have to confess. He already knows.
Right.
It knows. It's you're not hiding behind a rock. It's not. Everything is seen.
Right.
So
with that all,
so right. So
adding to that all-seeing
eye.
eye.
Right. So you don't have to ask him for what you're looking for. It already knows.
Right.
So you have to sit still and be quiet and let the answer come in.
Right. Right. Okay, we're gonna have to get back.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So the T. I mentioned the letter T. It looks like a cross. Okay. the T used in the Neteru, the language of Cush and Kemet, it will make a word feminine. So when I say Neter, that is a masculine form of Neter. So the feminine of Neter is Netert. Okay. So Ausar, the feminine of Ausar, is Aset. So, all right. So when you have a T, then it feminizes the word. Okay. All right. So the bull, which the pharaoh was, he will say that I'm the great bull. So the bulls were really female. You have Heter, which was a very old Neteru, and you have Aset, which was also Heteru, who represents had bull horns on her head. Okay, and I'll explain that later. So let's get into astronomy. So astronomy is the study of the universe and the contents out of Earth's atmospheres. It's looking at the sky and the stars and observing them. And that's what our ancestors in Africa did. They named the stars, they created the constellations. So it's a mapping of different stars to form a symbol or totem in the sky. So these are the imperishable language. This is more, the temple walls in Kemet may be blown up in World War III, whatever, but nothing can move those stars in the heavens. And those stars say something. Okay? All right, so they were the first astronomers, and a place to study the stars is called an observatory. And the oldest observatory is in South Africa, called Adam's Calendar. It's called the Incas, is the African word. Okay? And Credo Muta, he's still alive. He's a spiritual teacher there. He puts Adam's Calendar at 80,000 years before Christ, which is the oldest man-made structure on Earth. Okay? Another observatory is in Tia, Ethiopia. Another one is in Naphtali in Egypt. And one I just recently found is in Kenya, and that's called, and I may say it wrong, Namaratatunga II. That's the area that's called. All right, so I have 4 that I list. And then I talk about how they mapped the stars, and even the Egyptians did some astronomical work. The tomb of Seti I has a zodiac in it, and it's talking about the stars. In that tomb of Kemet, you have a celestial diagram that I show. Okay, so if you're into astronomy, it's good to look into that. Now I get into astrology. Astrology is taking what you see in the heavens and applying it to oneself. Some people say, okay, astrology is pseudo because it's not proven in science. Our ancestors knew this, so they created astrotheology. Is astrology, is taking what you see in the stars and applying it to your culture. Okay, so they saw the heavens as an extension of oneself. They studied the macrocosm to understand the microcosm. So you are a baby universe. You have more atoms in you than there are stars in the universe, because the universe is expanding and becoming more complex. You're a recent phenomenon in the universe. We just came on the scene. So we are the complexity of the universe. So say it started with a single atom and things became, you have stars are formed from nebulas, gaseous clouds. You have molecules. You have things that are working in the universe to form matter. So, and then from those gaseous clouds, stars are formed. So that's a complexity that is occurring. And then a dead star, it explodes, forms planets. So all that matter in those stars and from those gaseous clouds and from the atoms are within everything you see. So all the material things you see before you, even your body, comes from a star. In science, this is literally.
Right.
This is not allegory.
Right.
All right, so astrology, they saw the sun, and they studied the sun, and the greatest group of stars, the sun is a star, they grouped the stars, and the greatest grouping was called Orion. So in the oldest spiritual text on the planet, it's called the pyramid text. And in one of the tombs on the walls, the king is saying, I am Orion, numerous times. He's saying, I am the greatest of the stars. So Orion is the hunter. In the Bible, you have, is it Nimrod or? Nimrod. He's the hunter. So from my studies, that represents Orion. Orion is made of 7 major stars. That's what, when you get the 7 being like a really spiritual number. And in the Bible, 7 is mentioned in Revelations. It's talking about the Orion constellation. Okay, so Orion is a hunter, and what is he hunting in the stars? He is hunting a rabbit. Okay, this rabbit is his brother. Okay, I'll explain that later. And there's a grouping that's these are stories that were created to explain, similar to what we've already said, the sun's path. So the sun travels along the ecliptic. So it's the equator in the sky. It does a line. It appears that it's going in a line, but really the earth is going around the sun. But as you see the sun travels, it rises in the east and sets in the west. It goes in a line. That's called the ecliptic. That ecliptic is the zodiac. That is science. That is not pseudo. That's not astrology. That is astronomy. So the zodiac has astronomy and astrology. So it has science and pseudoism. But our ancestors applied both. So they applied religion, spiritual symbolism to it, but they studied it as a science. Okay? All right, so they also studied the brightest star in the night sky, which is called Sirius. Sirius is the northern star, and they knew that the sun travels around that star. Okay, and they knew that the earth travels around the sun. So they knew the circular path of everything. They knew the circle of life. Okay? All right, so I go into that in much detail. I talk about the supergiant, which is a cluster of constellations. It appears like the celestial sphinx in the sky. They call that Hu, which is God. And at the mouth of the supergiant is Orion, and Orion is the Word of God. So that all this was tying into me, and at one point I thought I was an atheist, and then a friend of mine said, "No, you believe in the divine." But all this stuff had to be brought together. Me seeing that, Ausar was called the King of Kings, Lord of Lord, and the King of the Hill, and the Savior of man. It brought civilization. Everything attributed to Jesus was done thousands of years ago.
Right. And
then I was like, okay, our ancestors are saying, and there's many more things accumulated, that we are God. I know it didn't tie in just now, but hopefully after reading my book, you will see that we are the creators. You are a creator. You create. You are a creator. You are the universe in creating itself. Okay? So I'm not going to get in much detail because that can go really deep with the constellation, because I get deep. So the next thing I talk about are dragons. That's a recent thing I added. Because we see in fantasy movies today, like Lord of the Rings and stuff, talking about dragons. That is from our culture. So a lot of the ancient classical civilizations, their myths and allegories were tied to snakes. So a serpent is a big snake. And so if you look up dragon, the definition of dragon is a serpent. So these dragons were just snakes. They look like snakes. They're big snakes. They may have wings and legs. And they meant and they meant something. So in Genesis, you have the snake talking to Adam and Eve. The snake, is he evil? He's telling Adam and Eve, I can tell you about the knowing of good and evil, about knowledge. He's providing wisdom. Okay? Then God comes in and puts a stop to it and says, you're not following me. Okay, so why is that? So you have to question this thing. Where did that story come from? Why would God be against wisdom, where in Africa learning divine wisdom was the core of their culture? So was that written for a purpose to go against African culture? All right, so I'm not going to get into the dragons. One of the dragons mentioned ties your personality to your spirit. So that's an allegory. Okay, so a dragon does that. So that's what dragons are doing, good things. Now, you did have evil dragons, but in the universe, you have chaos. When if everything is God, that mean, and you believe in the devil, that means the devil is God. Okay? So all existence is God. So Hitler is God. You may not respect him or like what he does, but
it went left.
You respect him anyway. As a person of wisdom, if Hitler came in your house, he just killed millions of people. Do you feed him? I do. Not because I agree with him, because Hitler needs to see another part of being. Okay, he needs to. No. I'm just saying this is what our ancestors taught. Like in war, when you defeat your enemy, you don't kill them. If you won, you bring them into the fold. That's what they did. They'll bring their enemy into their kingdom and teach them about the wisdoms of their culture. So they will learn. Everybody's capable of what? Transforming, even Hitler. All right? Okay, so I discussed the inner beings of the pyramid. Okay? And then that's it. That's with astrology. So the pyramid, we'll talk about how the corridors are aligned to different constellations, meaning they're aligned to the Garden of Eden, which I put at the uppermost part of the heavens, and that's your home. That was considered allegorically where you come from, the imperishable stars. These are the stars that never set below the horizon. Okay, so there's a home there. It's a constellation shaped as a house called the Kushite king, called Cepheus, and that's your celestial home that you're just coming here visiting. So who cares if your house burned? Well, care if your house burned down. Well, be not too consumed in the physical realm, because you are eternal. Focus on what that's eternal. Okay.
You know, it's funny. The scientists, and through NASA, they navigate, which they'll never be able to reach, but they say the way to that space is through Orion's belt. You know, if you can get through, if you can create something to get through Orion's belt, you see what's on the other side, and that's what they're looking for. You know, it's all navigated. They're trying their best, but that's where they say the home lies.
Yeah, so they may say that because there's an Orion Nebula. That's the closest nebula to us. So as I said, stars originate from nebulas. So the Earth and our sun and everything, all the stars you see in the night sky come from Orion, the nebula, because that's the closest nebula. So all what you see, everything in existence in the physical realm came from there. All right. So let's talk about religion. All right. So in the book, I once said I left some things unsaid, but I have added some things purposely based off readers' feedback. Because I'll ask them things and they would not mention things because I was hoping that they would get it. So one of the first things I show in religion, let me give the definition of religion. So all the definitions I give are from online. You can look it up. They're not from me. Religion is the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. That's the definition I give. So the next thing I show is that today's religions are tomorrow's ancient myths. Okay, because at one point in history, Odin was worshipped, Zeus was worshipped, Asar, Heru were worshipped, but nobody worshipped them anymore. They were worshipped in the past because things change. One in the future, are we going to be worshiping Jesus and God? Think about it. Nothing stays the same. All right, so.
But I could, you could say that people are worshiping the same thing just by a different name.
But there's a difference.
Yeah.
So
it's just different names and different eras, but it's the same because it all comes from one source.
So here's the difference. Mm-hmm. When I say worship, in the past, worship means seeing the power in nature, in those attributes, and studying nature is science.
Right.
It's to know.
Right.
It's to know, because we don't know everything. So our ancestors created math, language, everything you learn in school originated in Africa. It was to know about oneself. The universe. The university is the study of the universe, which is should be about studying yourself so you can become a better person. Not to learn a trade to help some other person out. If you're not growing from your studies, what you paid all that money for? All right, so worshiping, when I say worship the sun or worship the moon, is to study it, to study its behavior, to understand what it is, to understand what's going on, to break it down, to create, use math to mathematically to get it right. So they knew the year. It took 365 and a quarter days for a year. That was mathematically figured out. It wasn't faith. It wasn't, let's just come up with this number. So that's worship. Is to know, to understand your nature. Okay? They created these totems to explain and to assist them in learning this. Okay? So what happened, I'm going to skip a lot of things because I do explain the zodiac. But the zodiac entails so much that I really can't get deeply into it. But the zodiac, from looking at the zodiac, when you see it in the book, I start with the zodiac starting with Aries. Aries is the ram. What do you have in Egypt that has a bunch of rams? It's the temple of Karnak. That's the temple of a moon. A moon, you see statues of a moon there. And before you walk in, you see all these rams. I always wanted to know, what's all these rams doing there? A moon stands for Aries. A moon is meaning being birthed into the physical realm, the unknown. So he also represents Atum Ra. Okay, so Atum Ra on the zodiac is the zodiac is a circle. I show it in the book. There's a horizontal line and a vertical line. The horizontal line is the horizon. So you'll see a pharaoh saying, "I am Lord of the two horizons," or Heru is that. So okay, and you see a vertical line. Okay, that's a cross within a circle. Okay, that's the simplified version of a zodiac. Okay, so if you look on the east side of that circle, or where the horizontal line meets the circle, that's April. That's the spring equinox. And that's when it comes from the bull. So that's Taurus. Okay, so you have this bull not in just in the temple that in Heru's, in the Hathor's temple in Dendera, But you see the zodiac also in various temples. I mentioned 4. And I go into the zodiac that's in the tomb of Seti I. Okay, so I explain that. It also shows the bull. It shows the alligator, which is the fall. So instead of the scorpion, where you get the scorpion king, okay, that kills the sun in the fall, the sun is dying in the fall, they had the alligator on the wall. You have Taurus the bull on the wall there, and then you have a boy holding a pitcher of water, so that's Aquarius, and then you have the lion, Leo. Okay, so this is in numerous places in Egypt. You have to look for it. Okay, so those are the 4 animals. So those are totems representing the zodiac. Okay, and so basically, if you look at the Congo cosmogram, which I explained, and where you have on the same side of the circle, you have the sun rising, or that would be Atum Ra. You have Ra at noon, and then you have Ra Atum in the evening when you die. And then at the very bottom, you have Ausar, because he's died on the cross. So you see how that's in the Bible, dying on the cross. And after 3 months being born again in March. Okay? So you die in December, and then you're born again in March. March 21st. Okay? So all classical civilizations based their religious culture on astronomy, off just that. And that Congo cosmogram comes prior to Cush. It comes from the very oldest people, the Sand and the Twa people, who studied the heavens, and they created that circle of life. Okay? They also call that the tree of life. Okay? So the Christmas tree with the many lights, it's the tree of light, and the lights of the stars, and the light at the very top is the sun. A wreath is the zodiac. And then you have the ribbon, which is the ribbon, the constellation Pisces is the ribbon. Pisces on the zodiac is right where below the horizon is considered the spiritual realm, and above the horizon is the physical realm. The unseen is the spiritual below, where the sun goes every night, and then it rises again in the physical realm. So Pisces on the zodiac is right before March, in the March area, right next to Aries, and that's the ribbon, that's the rope, the thing that binds the physical to the spiritual realm, and that's the Christmas wreath. All right, so it's a lot more to it. I give a lot of scriptures in the book tying that the Lord God is the sun, S-U-N, that what happened, and all cultures had this around the earth, the sun represented oneself as the savior, because without the sun there would be no life. There would be without stars there would be no planets. So our ancestors knew this. They traveled the world by boat. They saw, okay, why is it so cold here? Oh, we're up here. They knew their position on the planet. Say the sun is really giving us more than this area. And we have a lot to thank for the sun. You know, it's probably a lot of things that transpire. Right. But we thank a lot of things but our sun. We never thank our sun. But without our sun, you would not be here. It would be so cold here. Just imagine how cold it is this winter at night. Without the sun, it would be even way colder than that. It would be frozen. All right, so, okay. All right, so I'm going to go past that because I'm almost near the end. Let me see anything I want to talk about. That goes in great detail in the book. How the zodiac explaining the Bible. There's many scriptures mentioning the ox, the lion, the man, and the eagle. Those four animals. Are those
the 4 ages? Do they represent the 4 ages?
There's more than 4 ages.
I mean, 4 ages that we recent, more recent 4.
No, represents ages. The 4 seasons, the 4 pillars of the universe.
Oh, okay.
They call it the pillars, the 4 pillars.
Oh, okay.
All right. So see those four
So those animals
on the lotus leaf, on the lotus flower, and the
Right.
coming forth by day.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the four, representing the four
the four
pillars of the universe. So the zodiac, they consider the circle of life, and the four pillars are the winter,
All right.
the solstice,
seasons.
the spring equinox,
Right.
stuff like that.
The four seasons. So you're saying that those four animals and the man represent those four
Right.
seasons? Okay.
Right. So from there, I explain ages, because the ages, an age which is consisted of how long it takes for, because the Earth spins on an axis. So at the very top of the spindle, just imagine if it's on an axis and it's spinning like a spindle, what's that creating at the very top? A circle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating a circle there, okay?
Right.
So within that circle, I consider that the Garden of Eden from my research. In that Garden of Eden, you have what? A tree and a snake.
Mm-hmm.
You have Ursa Minor constellation, and Draco is the snake, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then near that, you have Cepheus, also touching that. So these stories in the Bible, and they mention the ox, the eagle, the lion, and man numerous times that I mentioned in the Bible. Like, why would they mention constellations in the Bible? Okay? Because the Greeks who wrote the Bible, I mentioned who the oldest Old Testament, I mentioned the oldest New Testament, and I mentioned the oldest Bible, complete Bible. The oldest Old Testament that we have is written in Greek. It is called the Septuagint. There's nothing older. You can say there's something Hebrew that was found or something else, but there's nothing physically that has been found that's tangible but the Septuagint. You can even get the Septuagint on Amazon. You can read it. And the original text was Greek. It was in Coptic. So when the Greeks conquered, and I'm skipping ahead, I skipped a lot of stuff, so I recommend getting the book, but because of time, we're going to focus on, so how did things change? How did we go from everybody knowing that it's allegory, looking at the heavens, and seeing it that it's helping them understand nature? This is something you would teach your children. It wasn't secret because it was on the temple walls. It was allegory. So wisdom in Africa, you just didn't say, okay, a wisdom is called a proverb. Like in the Bible, like the Bible has it more explicit. You can read it and understand it more. But some of the wisdoms in Africa, it would be so weird. You would listen to it and like, I don't understand that. Mm-hmm. But the purpose was to find the answers, to seek it. That was to gain wisdom. And if as a teacher, and if you told the answer, you have done it injustice. Okay? All right. So the Bible is the same way. It's written in a way. You can read. I read it first, and I thought, okay, this stuff is real. I took it literally. It really, these things really happen because it's there. It's written. But then lately, in my journey, and this is took a lot of research. It is all allegory. Galatians chapter 4:24 is saying for which it is allegory. This is talking about the sons of Abraham. Now, if it's talking about the sons of Abraham being allegory and Abraham being allegory, that means the entire Bible is allegory because all the characters of the Bible come from Abraham. Okay? So if you still need questions on that, you can message me on Facebook.
So you're saying,
to help you
saying Abraham wasn't a historical person?
Nothing was historical. Adam and Eve were not historical.
But we're not talking about Adam and Eve. We're talking about Abraham.
Nobody in the Bible was real.
Okay, it's according to who though?
This is from my research.
But just what I'm saying. So okay, I'm not gonna.
I can prove it.
Well,
I can prove.
Yeah, because what happens is it's not even about, because it's like you have to think about in terms of the reliability of your research. So there's research that might say something else too. You see what I'm saying? So you can't just say you have research. There's other research, and so That's all I'm saying. So
Well, didn't they say that Abraham was the only man that we have that was actually taught and
it's Moses'
trained by
rule.
the Hermes himself? I mean,
No, Abraham. You get them all mixed up. So Abraham was supposed to went down to Egypt. Remember, he
right,
went down,
right.
And then they came in. Went into Egypt, and they came out. Through the Exodus. Through Moses.
Right, but they're saying that Abraham, he was actually, that they think that he was actually a student of Hermes himself. I mean,
I no, because Abraham's history precedes.
Okay.
Hermes is Greek.
Right, I know.
Tahuti.
I know Tahuti, and then Greek Hermes, right?
So I'm getting it all confused here.
That's okay, but that's what's written.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, people would have to really go look at the Hebrew and the Jewish telling of their history and their stories. And some of it's probably based on. And the other thing, I just want to at least think about is if people were telling us the same story. First of all, it probably just came from an original source, but for people to say everything that people reported and talked about as being myth and fable and all that, they really, it's almost like they're saying everybody was imagining and making up all these things.